I think that our world is really like a spider web. And when we touch one part of it, the whole thing can wiggle. And touching one part of it could be eliminating a species from it.
And they dropped a net off a bridge, and he flipped over, slid underneath it, and rolled up. And I was like, oh, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I was thinking about that when I saw that kayak.
Yeah.
And I went, I'll trade you some of this job for that kayak.
The tug is a drug. I mean, I got the tug, and I was just, I probably set the hook so hard that the fish flew behind us. I had no idea, but I was so excited to put fly tying together with the fly fishing.
Fall in love with the river. Fall in love with disconnecting. Fall in love with the sounds that we're hearing in the background. Connect, and all the fish are the bonus after that.
Welcome to the Flyline Podcast, where we enjoy the interesting stories behind the legendary guides and luminaries connected to Maine fishing. I'm Michael Jones. Today, I'm joined by a special co-host, Bill Pierce, a close friend and a familiar voice to our listeners. We had the privilege of recording this episode at the beautiful Carter's Cross Country Ski Center in Bethel, Maine, a fitting setting for the incredible stories we're about to hear. Together, we'll be talking with this episode's featured guest, Aldro French. Aldro French is a true legend in the Maine fly fishing community, with a lifetime of unforgettable stories and adventures. From his early days at the Rapid River and a lifetime spent at Forest Lodge, Aldro has lived a life deeply intertwined with Maine's wilderness. His passion for the outdoors extends beyond fishing, with experiences in whitewater rafting, skiing, and countless days on the water in pursuit of trophy brook trout. His adventures capture the camaraderie, the humor, and the thrill of fishing in some of Maine's most remote and hallowed waters. Aldro also fondly remembers his father, an accomplished fly fisherman, and shares amusing tales of close encounters with wildlife. With a lifetime of adventures and undeniable love for the Maine wilderness, Aldro's stories are as rich as the waters he's fished. We are thrilled to have him on with us today. Aldro French, welcome to the Flyline Podcast.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm at the Carter Cross Country Ski Lodge in beautiful downtown Bethel, right on the river. I see some fish jumping, some here. I'm just happy to be here with two great friends of mine. They go way, way back.
So who are you here with?
Well, Phil here, he's been around for a long time.
Yeah, Bill Pierce is a household name in the Maine fly fishing community and a very close friend of both of us.
Nefarious, in fact.
Yeah. I've been trying to track Aldro down now to sit him down to tell his story because I've been only listening to his stories for 35 years. And this format of talking to the legends and luminaries of the state of Maine, this audience this will not be lost on them. Aldro is a great guy, good friend, always tells a good story. And really, I think your greatest strength, Aldro, is being a great host.
You have to be, well, it's not really about the fishing, it's about the entertaining. And it's one thing about Forest Lodge. I gave them a woods experience. And from there, you can branch out to the fishing, the walking, and the enjoyment. And you have to be very versatile for all groups. At one time, I had a whole group for upstate New York, the winter house and the guide's house, and they were right down to redneck level with great people.
Yep.
They fished and triangle, and nothing but God, great food. And over in the lodge, I had this group over there, had their own cook, had the fine dining set for them, the crystal and everything and so forth. And literally, I'd have to change hats. I'd walk back and forth. One's talking about Chaucer, and God knows what the rednecks were talking about. But, I had a great run doing that. And you really need to be versatile and show people a good time.
How many years did you do this route?
Well, I don't know. I wanted that on the way over, Way back in the 70s, I was renting out and doing it. I'm not sure it was legal, but I was doing it. and so I never...
Is this where you went when you came back from your service?
Well, no. First year and a half, I became a blackjack dealer in Vegas, 1968 or whatever. I
When you returned?
At the Mint downtown. I didn't really drink. I had a little bow tie and a white shirt. I cleared my mind from the year and a half to Vietnam stuff. It was quite a trip. The dancing girls liked me. We'd water ski up in Lake Mead and climb mountains. They were all beautiful, most of them educated. I finally cleared my mind and came back here.
So really, the Rapid River and that woods experience was an escape from Vegas. And
all that hubbub. Sure, escape from John Prime would say, just escape from reality or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
something up my sleeve.
Had your father just acquired the place at that point, or had it been in your family before you?
The first time I saw Forest Lodge, I was 7 years old. I was at Camp Waganaki and went on a Rangeley trip. And we brought potager down there. And we stopped, and that was known as the Haunted House. And I saw Louise out there, and I guess it was Ralph at the time and so forth. We sat there for about maybe half an hour resting our canoes. Never dreamed I was going to spend most of my life there. That's the first time I saw it.
Wow.
Father, in those days, my father would row them, Richardson Lake, and they would throw a fly. Unbelievable.
Classic.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then he would fish at Middle Dam. I got a beautiful picture of my grandfather, a huge salmon. And so my father, family all came from North Norway. He was a lawyer over there and so forth. But he always went up to Rapid River. The first time I was there in the late 50s, I guess we stayed in Lakewood. Then he bought the place early 60s, I think 62, something like that. And he died in 72. And
Tell us about how he acquired it. I think there was something. He was a judge at that point, wasn't he? No, he was a lawyer. What did it have something to do with? Did he just flat out buy it? I couldn't remember if there's a story there.
Yeah, he actually bought it from Louise. Actually bought it through the cook. I think he paid $9,000 for the whole thing.
Oh, gee.
9,000.
He liked to fly fish. He fly fished. That's what he liked to do. So I was up there a little bit during my Freiburg years, and then I went to the Vietnam thing and screwed up, and finally ended up back there.
So you went to Freiburg Academy?
I did.
I didn't know that.
So my father, he loved to fly fish. I grew up on the West Branch of the Narragansett Wakers at Sprague Falls, and he was up there not for the little trout, but for the big salmon in the Narragansett River at that time. No,
And he had land out there?
Yeah, a lot of land.
Yeah.
He fished out there, but he fished all over. Yeah.
But he was a talented fly caster.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard some of the stories about fishing 3 flies at a time, and
Yes.
landing dry flies
He
consistently.
did. Those old cane rods, and he had the best, and he could cast that, and he had 3 leaders, or end and 2 leaders, and land them perfectly. Boom, boom, boom.
Wow.
So when you think you can know how to fly fish,
Right.
he could really fly fish.
Wow.
I remember when he died in 1972, I guess it was. I went up to Forest Lodge, and I kind of said, I love my father. But I said, I'm going to get to use your best rod. And, 1st of May there, I put it all together. Beautiful. It was a beautiful Bangor, or maybe Winston, I don't remember. But then I said, I finally got to use it. And I went down over the bank, stepped out on 2 rocks, fell, broke it right at the seat. But in reality, I felt him push me. Yes, he said, little son of a gun, he's not using my rod. Then I couldn't find his other good, wonderful rod. For 10 years, I'm taking a nap upstairs, and I heard the clink, clink. And he had it taped on the back of the old way desk up there. And after 10 years, it went down. So now I know a little bit more about it. I still have that rod today.
Wow.
But it's hanging up over my place in Stu Ben. Yeah, so I don't have to hang it. Yeah.
I love that story. I've heard you tell that many times. And that's actually connected to how we met. So how we met, and I'm going to ask you, Billy, about how you met Aldro, but the day that I met you, I had found my way down to Lower Dam, and I waded across right below Wing Dam Pool, so just right in sight of the winter house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fishing cane back then. I was in my mid-20s. I was probably 27 or 28. And I had this, river runs through it. It was still fresh in my mind, and bamboo was nostalgic. And I was down there, and I was starting to go down through the alders, getting closer to the shower pool. And this is hallowed ground. You're really not supposed to be down there, right? And I hear, hey, I look up, and there's you in Santa Claus. And he said, when you get done down there, you come up here. And I thought, oh, am I in a world of shit? And I came up, and you said, I saw you fishing with that cane rod. I haven't seen someone fishing with a cane rod in a long time. And then you started telling me the story about your father and all that sort of thing. And then you said, well, let's have a little lunch. And then you put the fire warden canoe in and paddled me around Lower Dam when Lower Dam was still there. And yep, 5-pounder, next cast. Yep, next cast, 5-pounder. And that was really how we first met. But I was very intimidated by you because, you're a very big guy, but you're also a very nice guy. And that's what I've learned over the years.
Not everybody says that, but thank you very much.
Tell me about taking a nap in Lower Dam.
Well, Lower Dam, the old dam house up there was lovely. I had a cot up there. I could take a nap up there, and the breeze would go through, and
Get away from everyone, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd go up there in late fall when you could still fish there in September, and the sun would be just right. I could see just where those big fish were. I'd run down there, and there'd be 20 people out there fishing. I'd paddle out my canoe, and I'd hook one right off and catch a couple and go back in. I could feel their eyes on the back of my head. Oh, they hated me. We've been out there for hours. But I took that to the grave with me after I left. I never told anybody how I knew where they were.
And you tell me how you could be, because when you're on Lower Dam, if you were up in the dam, you were about 12 feet off the water there, maybe 10.
Yeah.
And you could see right down, and those big brook trout would be right up against that dam.
Well, up against the dam, but they were also, you could look up and see where they were hiding.
Right.
That was the big thing.
Yeah.
Below the dam, they were there, the spring and all that type of thing. Yeah.
But when an angler would walk on the dam,
Down they'd go.
they sensed the presence of an
yeah.
angler.
No, you couldn't just walk out there and think you're going to catch fish. Didn't work that way.
Billy, how did you meet Aldro?
I had mountain biked in, because limited access. I'd mountain biked in with my brother. And I remember also meeting Ray and Marie Chabot at Sugar House, which was the Sugar Shack just downstream from Aldro's place. Wonderful folks. And my brother had forgotten his cheaters, and he was just starting to lose his ability to see close. And Marie says, "Oh, I can help you out." And she went inside and came out with these glasses with rhinestones and great big wings on them. and I see my brother's face, and I said, "Those are perfect. Thank you, ma'am. We'll drop them off on our way." We headed down towards down to Long Pool. And this gentleman wearing sandals and shorts was on his way up. And he goes, "It's all over, boys. Don't even waste your time." And I said, "Really?" Towards the end of July, he says, "I got no reason to lie to you, but it's over. The fish have moved out." He says, "And I know these fish." And he introduced himself, Aldro French. And I didn't know who Aldro French was, but I would come to know him. But do you remember that day coming down the path?
I remember that day, sure.
And it's funny, you meet people in your life, and you meet hundreds, thousands of people. And the special ones, you remember the day you met them.
That's right.
You remember the day you met them. And then he goes and he says, "And when you're coming up," just like he said to you, "stop in at the lodge, right there at Forest Lodge." He says, "We'll chat some more." And he says, "And watch out for the bear." And I said, "The bear?" He says, "Yeah, I was coming up this trail just yesterday, and I came nose to nose with a cub. And I knew Mama wasn't too far away." He says, "And I gave them a wide berth into the woods there." He says, "So they're around." And that's how I met the one and only Aldro French.
That was a true story, because I had my dog with me. I looked down, the dog stopped. I looked down the cub of the dog and nose to nose. I said, "This is not good."
Before your father acquired Forest Lodge, and even before Louise Dickinson Rich lived there, it was the Boston Club?
Oxford.
Oxford Club.
Oxford Club, yeah.
Tell us a little bit of the history of it.
You're catching me a little off guard there,
No,
but the Oxford
take your
Club
time.
was a...
Bill, or maybe Billy, can you talk?
Well, when I was running the museum, we actually had an artifact in there. It was a leather bag, and it had the name Thayer on it. And I have to want to say his name was Bayard or Bernard Thayer, and he and his brother and several wealthy Boston Blue Bloods had decided to start the Oxford Club.
Cool.
And they built that place there. And Aldro probably heard stories about a gentleman named Whitney and another one named Whittier, and they would meet the Thayer boys and have poker games. And one of them actually lost their lodge in a poker game on Richardson Lake, just upstream there a bit.
Whitney, I think.
It was Whittier lost it.
Whittier.
Yeah, come to find out, he didn't own it when he lost it. I read about he actually was being sued by a widow from Vermont who was a land baroness, and he was representing her, and he decided to make some investments that didn't quite pan out. And she had her lawyers take his camp that he put up as collateral to keep him out of jail. Well, when he lost it, then he went and lost it in the card game with the folks that started the Oxford Club. They give you an idea. I mean, Boston Blue Bloods, who owned American Cup yachts and thoroughbred racehorses and farms in Kentucky, and they picked a heck of a spot.
Yeah.
They picked a heck of a spot.
Yeah, I mean, describe the spot, Bill or Aldro. I mean,
Well, I can give you some fun facts about the Rapid River. The Rapid River has the steepest descent of any river east of the Mississippi that doesn't contain a waterfall.
Correct.
The first national whitewater championships, and Aldro can probably give you some more color on this, were held on the Rapid River.
Huh.
The first ever national whitewater U.S. Nationals. I believe it was 1938, just before the war.
wow.
I had the pleasure when I was working for the department, I would take media on junkets around different parts of the state. And this young man, a writer, called me from Field and Stream. And he says, I want to go to the Rapid River. And I thought twice, because I knew a lot of my friends would never speak to me again if an article ended up about the Rapid River in Field and Stream. And I was a part of it. But we took him because it was my job at the time, and had an amazing time.
I feel like I guided him the day before you went in. Didn't you send him my way?
And I think it was another writer.
Field and Stream.
Will.
Yes.
Will.
Yeah, I guided him.
You did?
Yeah, I did.
Jeez.
Yeah, didn't he have a passion for vintage gear and stuff like that?
I think he did.
Yeah.
But anyway, he ended up writing that the Rapid River was the finest wild eastern brook trout fishing in the United States.
That's true.
And he wasn't the first one to say it. And this guy right here, he was basically at the time the mayor of the Rapid River.
Aldro French.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing happened in there without Aldro knowing about it first
yeah.
off or dictating it.
Yeah. He was the man.
You were the fire warden, Aldro.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, 23 years.
Yeah. So the town of Upton decided they
town of Upton, but I was appointed by the Forestry Service. And so I was kind of like half conservationist, fire warden, or whatever. I wore the hat. But I did a good service as far as trash and cigarette butts and so forth.
Cared about the resource.
I cared about the resource. I was always very nice to people.
Yeah.
And had a lot of waiting belts for young kids that maybe didn't have them, or dad said, oh, my grandfather didn't. I said, no, you got to have a waiting belt. So I think I did a good service in there for many years. Tried to anyways. Yeah.
You did a great job. You also taught me that when you own a place that remote, you got to get all the brush away from you got to get it off the ground. You got to get all the tinder away. You always kept it pretty immaculate there.
If you want to keep your home. I'll go back to rafting a little bit. There's a picture, a full bore of rafting, and a little 11-foot raft way back. And he went right out of sight. It goes up to a class 5, right at class 5.
Cluey's Rips?
Curly's Rip, I think.
Curly's Rip.
Or something like that.
You know what Louise said about how things get named on the Rapid River?
Somebody
dies there.
Yeah.
He was a logger that happened to die.
I will tell you a very interesting story, and you think you're a good kayaker or canoeist or whatever. And poor David almost died. He only went down once. He never went rafting with me again. And, but in 1964, I think it was, big Swede, there was quite an article written on it. He came over, and he ran the Rapid River at full board, standing up in an open canoe, bare feet, and a balance beam.
Push pull.
A push pull. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you still see that today.
And he did that twice.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you think you're good. And I tried it and everything, but I never quite made it. I used to have a big inner tube and a rocking chair. And a cigar and a bottle of cognac. It can't be done, but I tried it.
Did you spill any cognac?
Well, it didn't take that much, I knew. It's a wonderful, wonderful river, and wonderful whitewater river, another great resource. And The fly fishing didn't like the kayakers. The kayakers didn't like the rafters and all that. But everybody had to get along, so.
Single-use resource. So
And I-
what was the trout fishing like in 1972?
Certainly in the 60s, there was a lot of big trout in there. I could go up to the dam, a lot of big trout. And,
How big?
well, I've got pictures up to 7.5 pounds. But I heard them up to almost 13 pounds. I've heard people tell score fishermen do exaggerate. I used to love to tell the guides, as they're leaving, to guide the people, he'll get you 5 pounds in a day. Well, you don't get them very often. And the guides would look back to me like, shut up.
Yeah, Chris Thompson talked about that.
Yeah. Chris is a beautiful guide. I listened to your podcast on him and so forth, and a couple of good digs he gave me. Yes, about the rhubarb. And I will say, when Chris was young, he would come down, and he was high school, whatever he was, and he would sit on the side, and I'd be out there in my canoe below the dam, and I could see what he was watching me, and he watched everything. He strained every bug. He turned out to be the best on Rapid River. Nobody compares to catching fish with him. And of course, I'd catch a bunch of fish, and I'd come in, and he was always very nice, but he had one eye and see what I had.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, I changed it. Of course, he'd run out there, wouldn't catch anything. I did that for a couple of years.
So you try to ID what flies you had on your hat. I remember that hat.
Well, I just changed things around. But he became very, he just strained every little bug. He revolutionized nymphing on Rapid River.
He certainly did.
I mean, but really. And so I don't particularly like nymph. I still like my dry fly, but,
Sometimes it doesn't work.
that's true.
Yeah.
Well, the host here, he, guided out of your operation, and we have a mutual friend that I'll never tell about the first day you guided that friend out of Aldro's place, and you and I bumped into each other. You grabbed me by the collar and described the day. You shook me, with 2 hands on me. You wouldn't believe this day this guy just had.
Yeah.
You said, Bill, I just had a guy who'd never been on the Rapid River, and he caught more of the biggest fish that I've ever been a part of.
That's right.
In the matter of an afternoon.
Yes.
And it's driving me crazy because he doesn't know how lucky he's been.
No.
And that he would have had to be in Labrador to have this kind of brook trout fishing today I just had. And you showed me some pictures.
We went to Lower Dam upon Aldro's advice, and the fish really weren't moving around much because they were still kind of in winter mode. They still had lice on them and this sort of thing. He said, nymph right at the dam, which I did. And then we waded down river left, Wing Dam. So you're in sight of Winter House. Thank you. And he tied into a 25, 26-inch brook trout that would be the fish of a lifetime for anybody. And this was probably the 5th fish he caught that day that was over 20 inches. That fish went across the pool, around the rock, so his line is fouled up around the rock, came loose, went back up around the rock, and came right back into my net and landed it. And Aldro was standing on the opposite bank downstream with a husband and wife team that had just come into camp, and we held that fish up like this in the air, like we just won the Stanley Cup. And as I told you, you don't know what you don't know, and he didn't know what kind of a day of fishing he just had.
Yeah, that just happens all the time.
I'll tell you a story. This is a good story. We're above the dam on a June night. It was one of those nights we're catching huge, heavy cast, unbelievable, and all they want to do is go in. They're farmers from Oxford. They don't care anything about these big fish. We're having a 1 in a 10-year night. It was just hauling these big 5-pound brook trout. We had maybe a dozen of them. Finally, we had to give up. But they
was it dry flies?
Yeah, all dry fly. It was just
Aldro fly hat.
Oh, I don't know. A bug is a bug is a bug. But it's funny on the hatches. The first day, you match the hatch. The second day, you're in competition with 4,022 other real flies. The third day, they're not going to take that match in the hatch anymore. You put a big black thing on, dragging on the bottom. Those trout are so full, they might move an inch. They won't move 2 inches.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah. So, but that was a great night. One of the few times that I was quiet up there, and I like to talk. And, when you had the Gray's Journal, the guy that owned that, and Gurich, was it Gurich, the writer?
Girock.
Gurich.
Yep.
And they're sitting on my porch, and they're having a drink. They might have even, I guess they were smoking something, and they were telling stories back and forth. That's probably one of the few times right towards dusk that I was quiet and listened, because they were good stories. Yeah. I've had so many wonderful people. You know the difference between guiding a woman and a man up there? Well, a man you got to take out early at daybreak. Yes, sir. And he's gun-ho, and he's trying to see how fast he can cast half of them. They want to stay out there 10 hours to catch a brook trout, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you take the lady out who doesn't want to go out till about 8:30. You take her in the canoe, and she does everything you ask her. She drops it here. We catch some nice fish. About 11:30, she'd say, well, I want to go in now. And one wants to go in, take her right in. And then after lunch, she says, maybe I'll take a walk. Then towards evening, she said, maybe I'll have a cocktail. And you get paid the same amount of money. It's so enjoyable. Why would anybody guide a man?
That's a great
But I
story.
still love to teach kids, little kids. They catch a little 8-inch brook trout, their eyes sparkle, and have them kiss it, thank God, and release it. That was wonderful. Yeah. And
Tell us about your fly shop.
I had a lovely fly shop. Actually, it was a full Orbis shop.
Yeah.
It was full Orbis. I made all my money on Adirondack chair, drop shipping.
Yeah.
Not on flies.
So you became a Orbis dealer by drop shipping Adirondack chairs, and that gave you
I couldn't advertise them.
No.
But I dropped over 300 one year. Yeah. No, Perkins was doing a shot show out in Vegas, and I was right next to him.
Yeah.
Doing something else, and I didn't really know him. He didn't know me because he owned Orbis. So we got to know each other a little bit. So he says, you want to go to a good place to fish out here and have some fun? I said, sure. So we went down to Laughlin, 100 miles downriver. It was wonderful. We had a big dam there, caught all the fish you want. We went by river taxi. There's casinos. We drank, partied, caught fish, gambled. Just wonderful. So that's how I met Perkins.
Right.
So he said, if you ever want to, now he knows who I am, but it's whatever. He came in a few times, but he said, you ever want a fly shop up there? He said, you let me know. So I tried to get one when I officially went into business, and the executive said, well, you have to have $300,000 with credit, you have to do this, we got to do that. So I wrote a letter back, and I said, if you don't really want to grant me a fly shop on Rapid River, the best to the east, I said, why don't you check with the guy that owns the stock? Because I'm going to. 10 days later, they were right back to me. Oh, what would you like, Mr. French? That's how you get a fly shop up in the middle of the woods like that.
Yeah, it was great. And you did some good things. You had a little thing because Didymo was turning into a problem, and you made everyone that came down the trail step in the salt water, had a little boot bath there, and you cared about the river. You had a nice...
Well, that's the whole thing. I really did. I loved the river. I knew the river so well, and I tried to protect it the best I could.
And I always felt like if some stranger was in there and they broke a leg or anything, you would have taken care of them.
Oh, took care of 3 broken necks. Had to fly a couple out. A lot of people got hurt in there.
Yeah.
And so when I saved quite a few people, the fly shop was really great. I never tied a fly, by the way.
Really?
No.
I didn't know that.
People said, you must have tied a lot of flies. I said, why wouldn't you tie a fly? I said, well, first of all, my father never tied a fly. He said you could buy better local ones. He once spent all his time fishing, which I liked. People love to tie flies. But I used up all my energy cutting gems. I used to mine the Maine tourmalines, and I'd cut all winter and so forth. So I never saw the correlation between a $10,000 beautiful Maine tourmaline and a 10-cent fly, to be honest with you. And I used my eyes and my hands to do that. So I never tied a fly. People thought I must have tied a lot of flies.
I always remember when I was departing, being in there for a week or so, you'd say, give me a couple of these green rockworms and I'll take 2 of those black. Right, Bill?
Goodness.
Yeah, he could poach flies.
I mean, and the thing is, you got these big marabou patterns, to catch those big fish that he really liked, and geez, I'd go in there with a fly box that looked like Liberace's closet. There's so much marabou in there. And I'd leave, and somehow it was cheap bill to pay to have Aldro take a few flies because he didn't tie them.
No,
Didn't need to.
I knew what worked.
And then, of course, he's got Mr. Perkins sending him all kinds of flies from Orbis. He was in the catbird scene. We talked a little bit about Louise Dickinson Rich, and we took to the woods in her book, and you actually met this author. How many novels did she?
27.
27 novels.
27 books. It was a bestseller. We took to the woods, yeah.
And that was printed over and over again. Many times it was such a popular book.
Many languages, about 8 languages. And they carried in their helmets, both the Allies and the German troops.
It was printed in olive drab for the GIs for a morale builder. That's something. And you got to live where she wrote the book.
Yeah.
I used to go and stay in the winter house, and the place just screams history and a human experience that was very unique because it was super remote. And that was the whole charm of the book. It was just super remote, and you could only get there certain times of the year. And if ice wasn't being made or it was breaking down, people did without. I love when you told me that, you know what? I'm going to spend the winter in there, just like Louise did.
Let's talk about that. I want to hear that story again.
I tried to keep everything up there just as it was 150 years ago.
And you did a good job.
Yeah.
And we had a crank telephone. When I went, there was 11 people on the line in this crank job.
Yeah.
And I had the most prestigious ring, one long. And we always answered. It was either cocktails or emergencies. Always answered.
If there was a one long ring on your party.
No, and we all picked up.
Well, it was a party line because a lot of people don't understand the concept. It went from Middle Dam all the way down to Cedar Stump at one time.
South Island one time. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. No kidding. So, and everybody had their own ring. And you would listen to the ring on a party line. And I remember when we were on a party line when I was a kid in rural New Hampshire, people would listen to each other's conversations. There wasn't a lot of private things going on up and down, but it was just a phone line that went to nowhere else.
But I think it probably started in connection with the log drives.
It did.
In communication. We're going to release water now.
Cut it loose.
The whole Brown Company thing.
Yeah, get the crew up to the alligator. We're going to need a hollow boom. And
we got a log jam at Gluey's Rip, so this and that, shut the water off. They had to have it. But Aldro, it'd be funny. One long, it's cocktail hour.
Or emergencies.
Or an emergency. Well, it's just pretty much the same thing, right?
You always answered it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about the winter you spent there. A lot of solitude.
A wonderful winter. You really get close to nature. I had a bobcat that would lay on I was in the new camp that I spent the winter, all winter. But I used to go in the winter all the time. And he would be on top of my wood pile when the snow would get a little bit. And I would stay up for hours. I never saw him, but I could see where he was watching me. Yeah, pretty good.
Louise talked about that in the book. She was banging out. She was typing in the corner of the winter house, and a bobcat was looking in the window at her as she was writing her first book.
They're pretty sneaky. It was just a wonderful winter there. And,
what'd you do for water?
Well, I went down to the river and lugged it up. I had to dig nothing to have 10 foot of snow in there.
Right.
So I get the water. So I went down. One time it was running pretty good and stepped out in the ice. I had taken off my jacket even though it was cold. And I went in. And no one else in the world would have got out of that river. And I hit the rip down below and I got out.
Oh.
But the only thing that saved me, I had taken off my coat. And wow. So that was a close one. But, the best part of being in the winter, Ray Shabbat would take his sled ride with his people. Mm-hmm. So I waited on. I was down there the night before, of course, and they had a hot tub. And so I'd run down there when they left. I hit them. They go out. I had about 3 hours. I'd take them this wonderful bath in his hot tub. I'd get out, lather off, do my hair, everything. Into his cabin, get dressed and back up. I'd go back down and Reed would go, something smells wrong here, Ray. But if you ever found out I took a bath every Saturday morning in his hot tub.
In his hot tub. Because it was already toasted. You had your own hot tub, as I enjoyed several times.
I had a redwood rain barrel to start off long before hot tubs.
Yeah.
And it took 9 hours to get her ready with the spring water coming down from the spring. And when she was ready, she was ready.
What was the capacity of that?
Well, 8 people okay and 14 conveniently. So I went to a wonderful one. And I just can't tell you how how to get close to nature.
Yeah.
And the Canadian Jays, boy, they were all around. They're so nice, you know. But at 30 below, those outhouse wasn't so nice. But I used to tell the girls I was a rich man. I had 3 outhouses. It didn't really help me much. But
There's a big deer yard in there in the winter, isn't there?
Go down the Rays would be hundreds and hundreds of deer, and all
Oh,
the
yeah.
snowmobiles would go by. Don't forget, I was in there long before there was any roads in there.
Right.
I had to come across by the lake or whatever. And I used to, start right in Andover and come in. But I spent a lot of part of winters in there in the old houses.
Just for clarification, what Aldro's saying is that in order to get to Middle Dam, you had to go to South Arm
It was one way.
and then across Lower Richardson to the dam, and then you could go down the Cary Road.
Correct.
Was there any other way to get in?
Well, you can come up through in Bagog, but
Right.
That was treacherous at best sometimes.
And then you'd be a long ways from Forest Lodge. You Cedar Stump to Forest Lodge, it's got to be
Well, 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 miles. Yeah, of tough sledding. Aldro, these are great stories, but I think it's time for us to take a short break and come back, and I want to hear more about your life in the Rapid River. In this Flyline flashback, we explore the history of the Farmer's Almanac, a publication that has guided generations with its weather forecasts, practical advice, and signature wit. Established in 1818 by poet, astronomer, and teacher David Young, alongside the publisher Jacob Mann, the Farmer's Almanac first took root in Morristown, New Jersey. Over 2 centuries later, it remains a trusted resource, deeply intertwined with the Geiger family and their Maine-based company. The Almanac's modern era began in 1933 when Ray Geiger, a recent Notre Dame graduate, took over as editor. His commitment to the publication was unwavering. Even during World War II, he continued his editorial duties while stationed in the Pacific. In 1949, Ray and his wife Anne purchased the Farmer's Almanac and the Almanac Publishing Company, merging it into the family's business, Geiger Brothers, and securing its future. A major turning point came in 1955 when Geiger Brothers, along with the Farmer's Almanac, relocated to Lewiston, Maine, where it remains headquartered today. Under Ray's leadership, circulation skyrocketed from 85,000 copies to over 6.5 million. A tireless promoter, he conducted more than 30,000 media interviews, earning him the title of the most interviewed man in America from TV host Art Linkletter. Following Ray's passing in 1994, his son, Peter Geiger, stepped in as editor, ensuring the family's legacy endured. Today, Peter serves as editor emeritus, while Sandy Duncan holds the title of editor, the first woman to do so in the publication's history. For more than 200 years, the Farmer's Almanac has been a reliable guide for long-range weather predictions, gardening insights, and practical wisdom, all while maintaining its unique sense of humor. Thanks to the dedication of the Geiger family, the Almanac remains a beloved piece of American culture. And now, back to the second half of this episode. So, Aldro, I know you are a veteran, and you also have a place in your heart for other veterans. And both Bill and I have done work with Project Healing Waters. Well, you've done a lot of work with Project Healing Waters.
One time, no? Yep, they right on the ground floor in Project Healing Water. We'd have 10 to 15 disabled vets in there. I had to have 1 doctor, 2 nurses. But I was very proud of that, and you listen to them. And I remember the first time that General Libby flew the Black Hawk in. He was the AG, returning adjutant general of the state of Maine. Wherever the general goes, people will show up. And he only came in that 1 year because it disturbed the veterans so much. But, the Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, sheriffs, politicians, everybody was there, Everybody wanted to go up to Middletown to meet the general. I said, no. I said, you guys can go up later. I said, I'm going up my 4-wheel and get him. I said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to bring a quart of whiskey and a couple of joints. We'll have a good time. And so I went up to met him, and it took us 3 hours to get down there. I had the side-by-side 4-wheel. Everybody else got down there, the entourage. It turned out that he was a first lieutenant. The same time I was a sergeant, the same outfit in Vietnam. We didn't know each other, but at the same time, pretty good, huh?
Was that 7th Cal?
First Cal.
First Cal.
And
sorry.
we talked and talked and talked. We finally got down there. And then he would come in after that, but he would have give a salute over the river at noontime. Yeah.
In a Black Hawk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm always very happy that I know the program continues today, and it's a wonderful program. And I remember Charlie was his name, and And a friend of mine, Dick Connolly, took him fishing every year, and he was blind.
I remember Charlie.
Redheaded guy.
He always caught the biggest fish.
Yeah.
He caught some nice fish.
And it took him up Rapid River. He was blind. I'm on the elevator one day at Togus, going up full elevator. I'd said something. A little voice from the back says, "Hello, Aldro." See, he couldn't see me, but he knew my voice.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel so good.
Yeah. He was a sweetheart.
Yeah, and he had fisherman's luck. We take him out on the East Outlet with the drift boats, and yeah, man was blind, literally. Think about fly fishing blind.
Yeah.
Yeah, my father was about 90% blind. He's up to Lower Dam. And he's got 6 flies on or something. This young game one came out of the woods, and I'm just a young guy, you know. He said, "Can I see your line?" My father said, "He's in a chair. He's got one leg now, getting ready to die." They did one. I said, "You've got 6 flies on here." My father said, "Yep, need all the help I can get." And now, don't forget, he was this old blind guy with one leg sitting in a chair, you know. And so the game was, "Well, I'm going to have to write you up on this and so forth and so on." He said, "Yep." He said, "But before you do," he said, "I want you to consider." He said, "You're a young guy, right?" And he said, "Yep." He says, "Do you think this is going to advance your career? Writing up an old blind guy from a wheelchair. Do you really think it is?" You want to think about that. And he kind of disappeared back in the woods. Like, yeah.
You talked earlier about the American flag on Lower Dam, and I always thought it was a great gesture on your part. But Bill, don't you remember there being some sort of a tradition of the 4th of July?
Oh,
Wasn't there a party?
you know, the fishing wasn't always great, but it was pretty good. But, you know, I got to the point in my relationship with Aldro that sometimes I'd go to Forest Lodge and I wouldn't fish at all.
Sure.
And just hang out and we'd have a good time. But 4th of July, Ray would have a get together to kind of kick it off, and the parade would start, and they would go up to Forest Lodge, which was quite a jaunt off the road here, maybe, I don't know, 700-800 yards at most. And, you know, folks in various stages of a celebratory mood or recovering from the events on July 3rd. Aldro would fire a salute, and the flag would come down and go back up again, and Aldro would fire a salute, and everyone participated. Yeah.
You know, when Ray died, it's quite a party was there. It was a full house in there. I don't know if you went into it, did you?
I wasn't there.
But probably good 200 people on his lawn.
Mm-hmm.
And even the dean of Harvard came in, was driven in. I spoke about something, it didn't amount to anything, but the Fish and Wildlife got up and they said, we're very sorry to Ray has passed and so forth, but there is good news. And the good news is we were able to lay off 3 game wardens. And it probably he was last of the great white poachers. And that broke the ice. Everybody laughed, and then we had a good time.
Oh,
and I'm not so sure they didn't lay off 3.
Well, Ray performed a Fish and Wildlife duty at one time when someone down at Cedar Stump drove their snowmobile into the water in the middle of the night, and the man's wife and daughter pulled him out, and on one sled that wasn't underwater, shot up the Cary Road and got there, and this man was on his last breath.
He was all done.
He was hypothermic beyond belief. They dragged him inside. Ray's a firefighter, and he tells Marie and another woman to strip naked and get into bed with this guy and revive him. And that's what saved this man's life. And that's the way medical services were performed on the Rapid River, is that whatever it took, that's what happened.
Well, it worked.
That Mary Audrey was the nurse there, and Ray, they almost put him in the hot tub, which would have killed him.
Yeah, probably would have killed him.
They both stripped down and hugged him, and there was the story ended well. And
your audience needs to remember that first aid trick.
That's right.
Yeah.
What a run! I was there for well over 50 years, and no money in it, but what a great run. So I'm a very fortunate man. There's so many wonderful stories. One of the things at Forest Lodge, the fishermen, big table down in the kitchen, which was underground, and the wonderful meals.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the sports, I said, don't you want to hire a cook? No, we can cook. I said, well, so I didn't run it as a sporting camp. You had to hire your own cook.
Yeah, we'd bring in our own cook.
And,
Or you'd hire a cook for us.
no, they had to hire the cook.
Well, we hired the cook, but you arranged it.
I would suggest it.
Yeah.
And they'd be in there, and conveniently, the gas stove wouldn't be working years ago, wasn't it? It's the old cook stove there. After about that third cocktail, here's these well-heeled people from New York or New Jersey. They can't get that stove, and they can't cook. And finally, they say, Mr. French, can you help us? Of course, I would, but I let them hang for a while. I think the best conversations are there. You have a bunch of good wasps from South Carolina, some good Jewish boys from New York, and you have all these different people. You don't say a word, just sit, and the conversation starts, and somebody else from Canada or whatever. It's just wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Many a meal there where you could hardly fit the number of people that were in the room around the table. You'd be shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow.
Absolutely.
How many meals do you think you ate at that table?
Oh, I don't know, but it was always an enlightening experience, and it was fun. I mean, no electronic entertainment was ever required when you went to Forest Lodge. I mean, the place screamed history. You know, it's funny, that kitchen is built underneath the original Forest Lodge. And when Louise wrote her book, her big ambition was to make just enough money to build a kitchen over there. And her husband was a Rhodes Scholar. Ralph was a Rhodes Scholar, correct, Aldro?
Correct.
Okay, and they met, Ralph had decided to head into the Willy Wax, and he started this place. Everything there was really well thought out.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and this kitchen, the canned goods wouldn't freeze in the winter.
Why?
Because it was below the freezer line in the back wall, and then everything stayed cool in those cabinets in the summer. I mean, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And Ralph, you got the Cary Road, and originally the original folks that had Lakewood camps had buckboard that would go up and down this road. They'd meet folks in Umbagog Lake, and the steamer would let them off, and they'd come up. And Ralph brought a Marymount touring car across the ice.
Mormon.
Was it a Mormon? No. Okay. Mormon touring car. And he charged people. He'd meet down, in whatever end, Middle Dam or Umbagog, and run up and down the Cary Road. And he had several different vehicles over time that he brought in across the ice to this road that basically didn't connect with the outside world.
Yeah.
I.e. Cary Road between the two.
Yeah.
I had a Jeep, 56 Jeep over there, brought over the ice.
Yeah.
And father did. That was it.
Wow.
Willie's Jeep, yeah.
So just for clarification, there's this road in Maine that, how long is it from Middle Dam?
6 miles altogether.
6 miles altogether, where it's, you can drive up and down it, but you can't get into it back in the day. Now you can.
It was a carriage road to get folks to the original name of Lakewood Camps was Angler's Retreat. And it was widely known to having the worst food in the guy would do all kinds of advertising in the Boston papers, and we have fresh eggs and we have fresh milk, and people would go there, and basically if they didn't catch trout, they were going to starve to death.
Yeah.
And it was the first public house in the Rangeley Regions was Angler's Retreat, but the fishing was just phenomenal.
Well, I have a lot of secrets through Al Parsons, who owned Lakewood Camps for 40-something years, and she lived to be almost 100.
And you lived with her?
I've lived in a place in Andover. She lived downstairs, I lived upstairs. She lived to be almost 100. And she always said to me, when I got ready to leave, she said, "I'll see you later, cutie." And when I went to fish in Iceland, she said goodbye.
That was the end. Yeah. But she had a couple of traditions that I liked. She would do the crossword puzzle.
Brilliant lady. Yeah.
She'd do the crossword puzzle with a ballpoint pen.
Correct.
And she'd have a cocktail at a certain time every day.
Every day.
Yeah. And that's the
And when I went out with her, I was allowed one drink.
Yeah.
Not two.
Got it.
And she, I never got ahead of her, period. She was way ahead of me. She's just a wonderful person, well respected. And,
yeah. I love the story. There's a little controversy around this next story, but I love the story about how there was a little bit of a land discrepancy that Aldro was involved in, and someone thought they owned the land, but at the end of the day, they didn't own the land. Al Parsons owned the land and handed you the deed, and that ended the whole dispute right
She
there.
let me go through a year of agony proving it. And then she sold it to me for $1. And believe it or not, I'm still on the deed for 400 feet there, and the year and all that.
No kidding.
I've never been back. I keep thinking I want to take one more trip in there and walk the river, but Louise didn't go back. I don't think I should.
It's interesting. I didn't know that. When she left, she never did go back.
No, she moved to the coast, Korea.
Yeah.
I went back once after Aldro left, and I never went down to the lodge.
Really?
I went bird hunting in the road
Right.
up above.
Seriously. Yeah. Right. It's changed.
It's okay. It's not. It's not.
Nice. I'm in my 80s. I mean, life moves on, so.
It does.
And I'm proud of the way Aldro's handled himself since that time. And it was a very painful time. And Aldro said to me one time, I had worked out a deal with the state where it would be preserved, but it wasn't quite right for Aldro.
Mm-hmm.
I had to call the director of the Maine Forest Service and Department of Conservation at the time and tell him the deal was off.
Aldro went to Chile.
That was the day, that was the day he was supposed to sign the papers to have it take place.
I remember this.
Oh my Lord!
They reneged that slick lawyer there and everything. He worked it around, and they reneged on the original deal. So,
Where were you going in Chile?
what down with you?
That's right. That's right.
He says, "Bill, I'm going to Chile." He says, I've signed over power of attorney to you. You go in and do whatever you want."
And you didn't.
And, this is a man who told me 2 weeks before he felt like he was selling his right arm. So it was a pretty interesting time because I worked for the state at the time. And I can remember holding the telephone out at full arm's length while a very powerful man who also happened to be an Irish redhead
McGowan.
read me the riot act.
Pat McGowan.
I called Rhonda afterwards and I said, "Well, I think you're going to be looking for another job, honey."
Well, remember Charlie, who you brought to Chile with you, the lawyer from
Charlie W. Charlie
Walsheim.
Walsheim.
Was he a lawyer?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
He taught federal law. He was a big shot. Now.
So he would say this so perfectly. "I'm Charlie," and he would his personality would do nothing to dispel the reputation of an annoying lawyer from New York.
Chevy Chase character.
Totally, looked just like him.
Absolutely.
Smoke Marlboro.
Charlie Walsheim, how the hell are you?
And let me tell you, for the first half an hour, you're gonna hate me, and after that, you're gonna love me. And he was right.
He was right.
I remember the first day I met him was in Patagonia on a windy highway. He got out of a car and lit up a cigarette and probably lit another one off that one, another one off that one, and he had a good time down there. He wanted to fish a hornberg the whole time, Aldro. Do you remember that?
Something.
I was making him fish foam terrestrials. You got to use this woolly bugger and you got to use this long articulated leech. "Mike, I just want to fish a hornberg. He's sitting in the back of my raft and we're halfway down through the float. He keeps barraging me about this whole thing. I said, "All right, Charlie, bring it in." Tied on a hornberg. You know what happened?
Boom.
One cast after the other. You could do no wrong.
That was it. Same thing happened in Yellowstone National Park fishing.
Put a hornberg on.
And they were taking some caddis and stuff. I put a hornberg and I was skedaddling that thing across, and the Slough Creek and those cutthroats were coming up and slamming that thing. Everybody thinks that the hornberg's a Maine fly. It's not.
It isn't?
No, it was developed in Michigan.
Makes sense.
Michigan.
Yeah.
It's a streamer.
I'm sorry, Maine. I hate to break it to you. But it was a Michigan fly. I didn't know that. I always thought it was an absolute Maine standard. And it's probably much more famous now in Maine than it ever was
Yep.
in Michigan. So
Charlie was brilliant, interesting. And I loved to have him at the same table when they had the Wasp from South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
You just watch it start. There was no love there.
No.
How
did you meet Charlie? Did he come in with the guys from like upstate New York or something? Or
Yes. The professor from upstate New York, that whole group used to come in. There's another group, professors and so forth, and some good guys. Charlie, I remember, he was a pretty big-time federal judge one time, and some interesting characters.
You made some fabulous friendships, and you introduced me to some of those wonderful, warm, long friendships that was just really wonderful. So I thank you for that, buddy. I thank you for that. Oh, Aldro, do you remember when we went to New York City to present at the New York Anglers Club?
The Tishes on. They didn't get any higher. This
is the second oldest angling club behind Aquasic Angling right over in Rangeley. Aquasic Angling, 1867, New York Anglers right after that.
Right.
Fly fishing is just coming to the fore, and it's a gentleman's sport. And so a club is formed, and for a long time then only in this club in New York. And it's in this beautiful granite building, lower Manhattan, because you don't want to have to travel too far from your stock trading house. So Aldro says, Bill, you got to go with me. We're going to the New York Anglers Club to present Rapid River and Forest Lodge for a prize for a fundraiser. Auction. Big meal at their annual meeting or something. I said, Aldro, you can do that. He says, no. He says, I want you to do the presentation. And he says, I'll be working the crowd beforehand and we'll get as much as we can. And I believe it was for veterans. Wasn't it?
Probably under the guise of that. Yeah.
The proceeds were going to go, and Trout Unlimited. That's what it was. So I said, yeah, I'll go with you. And we went, and this place is a museum.
Right.
It's amazing. They have these exotic trips from all over the globe. So just before we went to present, this gentleman stands up and he represents a 120-foot yacht that will be off the coast of Patagonia.
Oh, yeah.
Equipped with a helicopter and all the food included, wine cellar. And I'm thinking, I'm going to present the Rapid River. It was going to be like Laurel and Hardy after Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and this guy's going on and he says that, and gentlemen, if you have a lady companion with you, and this is where he made his mistake. If you have a lady companion with you, after we drop you off at your river for the day, we'll take her on a helicopter ride to see marine mammals and
the Andes. And
my goodness, right? And now there's women a lot in this club, some very well-to-do ladies, and you could see the hair stand up on the back of their necks. And I said, Aldro, I got him.
Yeah.
And so I stood up. I said, man, do you believe 120-foot yacht with a helicopter? He says, we fly a kite on the Rapid River every now and then. And I said, and I want you to know, ladies, that if you bring along a gentleman friend, we got a heck of a woodpile that he could split while you're out fishing. And I will let you know that the outhouse has beautiful solar lighting if you have to go out there in the dark along the pathway, added just this year. And we have a hot tub, and Aldro stands up and he says, well, the capacity's 4, but it holds 8 conveniently. And the whole room was laughing. And that guy with that yacht was some pissed. But we had a great time.
What capacity were you working in at that point?
I was with Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah.
I was with Fish and Wildlife.
It was marginal.
And I was on my time, by the way.
Right.
So the gate, as you know, Mike, is what? The gate's probably a mile and 3/4
All of a
from the
mile.
lodge.
Yeah, yeah. How many times have I walked it? How many times have you walked it?
Oh, lots. But I can remember coming out one time. I had made an impromptu fire call to the Rapid River because I had spoken to Aldro where he got cell coverage, and he said, just get in here. And I had time, and I told Rhonda, I says, well, I'm going to go and see Aldro. And she says, just get in here. And the alder flies had just been around the lantern on the picnic table that night, which means the fishing the next day was going to be
1 day. I'm sorry. Yeah.
because they just pound these things. So I fly in there, and he and I had some amazing fishing. The next morning I get up, I says, I got to get out of here. And he says, yeah, I got some people coming in tomorrow. So I go out to the gate.
Forgot the wrong day.
And there's a man, and there's a cloud of dust as he walks back and forth.
I know who this is.
He's going back and forth at the gate. I open the truck door, and he looks at me and he goes, where the hell have you been? And I point her over my shoulder. I says, well, I've been fishing. Fishing? We're up here waiting. I said, well, I'm very sorry. I bet you think I'm Aldro French. And he says, you're not? I says, no, he's a very dear friend, and I just left him, and he's not expecting you till tomorrow. Well, he's got the dates wrong, and we've been waiting here for 2 hours. And I said, my friend, listen to me and calm down. I said, do not ruin which will be a time that you will never forget. The river's on fire. Your host is a lovely man. You're going to love him to death. Just step back, and you will never regret if you followed my advice.
Did Bob Romano follow your advice?
He did. And he ended up writing how many books about the Rangeley region?
Yeah.
At least 5, yeah.
Yeah, and wonderful books.
Yeah.
He has a poem written called Waiting for Aldro French.
Oh, yeah, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
He was madder than a nest of hornets.
Oh, he was. Because the world he comes from, it doesn't have what we call Indian time. Indian time is when you feel like taking a nap, you take a nap. You feel like eating something, you eat something. You feel like getting up and going fishing, you get up and go fishing. And Aldro was kind of tuned into the Indian time.
Island time, Indian time.
Yeah.
And you had a book, and you would write things in your book, and you were pretty good about it.
Yeah.
But you were also a lone operator. You were chief cook and bottle washer.
I had a lot of gals come and go, but, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some good, some bad.
Yeah.
But cheap cooking bottle water, that's right.
You were.
Yeah.
Well, you're always good to my kids. They love you to death. When they were growing up, the 2 youngest girls, I mean, Aldro would spend time with them down, casting on Oxford Pool. And
Young people.
he'd say, just don't, you and Rhonda take off, or you do whatever you want to do. And he says, me and the girls are going to hang out here. And he'd work with them and have a good time. And he was more like a big uncle.
Young people were wonderful. Sometimes Dad and Mom said, well, you're going to teach me. We want to be there. I said, you can't be there. But you can look over my shoulder and make comments. I said, I can't teach them that way. I said, you'll have them back tomorrow. Well, not today.
One of my girls she's 31 years old now, Haley, and she likes to tell the story about the first time she stayed at Forest Lodge. And Aldro, they came downstairs in the morning, and Aldro goes, oh, Haley, how did you sleep? And she says, I slept great. And Aldro turns around just quite nonchalantly and goes, Ralph died in that bed. And her eyes got as big as saucers. He says, maybe you won't want to sleep up there tonight.
So years I gave tours there for the libraries and all the schools and everything. And I always remember I went up to Rangeley up in the hill there. They had this farm. And I went up there on a Monday. It was closed. I had somebody with me. And this woman was out in the garden. And she came over and she said, what would you like? We're closed, but what would you like? I don't know. So I got a couple big bags of stuff. I said, why did you open up for me? Oh, she said, I'm part of the Rangeley Library. She says, you raised a lot of money for us.
Oh, that's nice.
And when I was in the library, I tried to take out a couple of books. The new librarian, she says, "Oh, you're not from here." She says, "I can't let you take out these books." There's a couple of old trustees in the back. You hear the middle chairs going backwards as they tell them, "I said, I'm not take out the book."
That's a beautiful building. Beautiful.
It is nice, Jeff.
It's a fabulous.
They used to come in and put on a Class A show there. They would come in a week before. There's 4 or 5 of them and clean the place.
Original Herb Welch paintings in that library.
Right. Yeah.
If you're ever in Rangeley, go in there and look at some of those.
It's pretty awesome.
There's one from out west, the Dark Angel Trail, and then there's probably the Herb's finest fish, brook trout. Original oil painting is in there. It's beautiful, but I'm glad you helped them out. So, Aldro, we lost one of the truly special Forest Lodge friends and let's call it alumni of the club, your club that you've so wonderfully presided over, Dick Walters. Just a wonderful Mollyauket TU member and got a lot of great things done. But you and Dick were fishing on a pond, not a little ways from Forest Lodge.
Sunday Pond.
Sunday Pond. Oh, you're going to expose it.
Adverse condition, cold.
Take it from here. Tell me about your.
I don't know how to do it, but we're out there, and somehow I swallowed my cigar. That started it. That I can't get my breath, and this old canoe is now falling apart because I'm rolling around on the floor. Poor Dick's trying to paddle for sure. We can't make it. I mean, it was the way he tells it was unbelievable. We sank the canoe. I mean, it was just so it was cold, miserable. I survived everything. Then I lit up another one on shore. Had to ride back with the flames that burned up his coat.
Did you catch fish?
No.
No, you didn't catch any fish? Then you told that story perfectly.
Yeah, we did. I shot the canoe too fast, so we didn't think about it.
Yeah, but Dick said he was quite worried about Aldro, and Aldro was paddling, and all of a sudden he heard this wheezing in the back of the canoe, and he says, and he would tell it in the way that you'd be in the front of the canoe and you'd be the primary motor of the operation while Aldro steered the canoe instead of perhaps participating at a level that would be acceptable to anybody in the bow. Well, he hears this wee, wee, wee noise, and he turns around and Aldro's beat red, and he says, "Aldro, what's going on?" He says, "I swallowed my cigar, and I think it's still lit." So what Dick said, which was hilarious, Aldro was rolling around and carrying on, and they get to shore, and, the wind's blowing, it's cold. They just want to get the heck out of there, and I don't know if it came out or went the rest of the way down. I don't know what happened. But Dick says he was amazed after the decks were cleared, lit up another cigar.
Aldro, I also remembered you had some involvement with the whitewater rafting community during the fledgling years of it.
Correct. I was the second regional right behind Hockmeyer. And we ran the Kennebec and the Penobscot, and it was pretty good. I got out after the second year because we didn't have any water, but I never let Rapid River become commercial from my point.
Right.
And
I got a question for both of you guys. So, in my experience, of fishing the Rapid River over many years, in freshwater, the only place that I've ever had a fish on that was consumed by a larger fish was the Rapid River. And it happened to me 3 times, twice with a salmon. One, it wasn't my line. I was with someone. Twice with a salmon and once with a small bass.
I've landed 3 brook trout that were between 18 and 24 inches that were not hooked by the fly. They were trying to eat the fish that my client had hooked. It was just a little sardine of a fish.
And I've fished all over.
I know.
And that is the only freshwater. It's happened to me many times in saltwater, but
freshwater, yeah.
Freshwater is the only place I've had it happen.
Yeah, they do it. It happens in Labrador with the pike up there. We'll go afterwards. But not a brook trout. Not a brook trout.
So
it's a Serengeti on the Rapid River.
So that leads me to ask you, Aldro, to please share your vision or desire for when you leave this earth, that if there is, you told me one time quietly,
I was coming back as a big brook trout. I was going to raise hell with everybody.
and you were going to come back as a big brook trout and consume every small bass you could eat,
Yeah.
is what you told me. And I
Love
said, I'm not one for reincarnation, but
Yeah.
that's pretty much epitomizes what Aldro's about. He loved that spot, loved that river, and cared about the conservation.
You know,
And even in death, you wanted to be a conservationist.
that
I got a call one time and said, "You want you to come in here? We got a VIP coming in and want you to guide them. We're only going to be here one night." A direct descendant of Squire Rangeley was there from England.
Right.
yes, oh yeah, something like that.
And boy, the good Lord was smiling on me as a guide because he hooked a whopper up on just above Second Current
Mhm.
in that pool. And he said, "Jace, I'm pretty sure that the Squire might have had something to do with my good luck today." And I said, "Yeah, but maybe a little bit more that you got to stay with Aldro."
So the town of Rangeley was named after his ancestors.
I think so.
Yeah, Squire Rangeley, James Rangeley. Yeah.
I think we could sit here and tell stories
Till
through the entire weekend. I mean, I've spent so many days fishing with you both that I consider you both not only good friends, but really great friends. And it means everything, Aldro, that you were willing to drive all the way over here to sit down with Bill and I. And Bill, it means everything that you were willing to drive down from the valley to spend this special time with Aldro and I. And on behalf of the Flyline podcast audience, I just want to say thank you for extending the privilege of your time.
Just wonderful to be here, especially when you get in the 80s, get to be interviewed and still
I'll never complain about getting to hang out with two friends that I love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
wonderful.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us for this intimate discussion, and thank you for listening to Flyline Podcast. We're proud to be sponsored by Geiger, the world's largest family-owned promotional products distributor based in Lewiston, Maine. Their support helps us share the rich history of Maine's fishing community through the stories that will be cherished for generations. A new Flyline podcast episode is released every 2 weeks on Tuesdays, so be sure to come back to meet our next famous guest. Until then, this is Michael Jones, and we invite you to visit the blog section of our website to enjoy photos and contributions from our guests and experience all of the episodes at flylinepodcast.com.